The TARDIS materializes in a storage room of a supermarket and the Doctor emerges out checking his ship. Something had pulled it out of the time vortex and brought them to 1994's Birmingham, though that's what the scanner had presented, and Louisa followed out. The supermarket's name is Plus and seems to have been recently built. The Doctor then decides to look around this supermarket as the TARDIS starts making groaning sounds like if it's in pain and needs to find the answer. They walk into the aisles to discover that is packed with customers, and the Doctor thinks it's just an average Wednesday for people to do their shopping. But then he looks on the customers and notices the likes of John Lennon, Marilyn Monroe and various of others. He interrupts a conversation between Peter Lorre and Orson Welles. Both actors took umbrage at the Doctor's questionable attitude about them being dead and that they are in Birmingham for some reason. Louisa wanders the aisles only to discover that the shelf stackers are murder victims from different centuries. She was aghast by this as she recognized a few faces she seen in the news, either front pages on the newspapers or on television. She was shook by this and headed to tell the Doctor. When the Doctor realizes this, he wonders if they've ended in some weird afterlife predicament. Is this a sort of purgatory? Louisa then watches Elvis Presley walk out the automatic front doors into a white void and then reappears again going to get his groceries. She approaches Elvis and says that he's just been and now he's back again. Elvis was puzzled by her and replies saying that he's come for groceries. The Doctor went over and asks if he can remember leaving the supermarket. Elvis blanked at the question and the Doctor thinks that the white void is like a time loop. They walk through and repeat the same day over again for eternity. The Doctor was now getting frustrated by the supermarket and its mechanisms. He approached a till and one of murder victim workers asked if the Doctor needed something. The Doctor handed out a bunch of bananas from the fresh section saying that a spider was living in it and that he demands to see the manager. The murder victim worker was a bit shook by this, but with the Doctor looking menacingly stern, the murder victim worker had to give in due to policies and reached for a phone to call for the management. A few minutes later, a trio of floating beings covered in white sheets approach the counter where the Doctor was standing at, and the Doctor looks at him knowing that something was lurking underneath the sheets. A disguise hiding something hideous, dervish or alien. The Doctor forcefully pulled one of the sheets, revealing a caterpillar in the style of a chocolate log-like cake on a metal plate with robotic arms with snapping pinchers, and spoke a high-pitched voice. The Doctor was extremely baffled by this and takes off the other, revealing the same result. They had tags built into the plates showing their names: Charlie, Clyde and Curly. The Doctor asks what the meaning of this ant farm filled dead souls in the time loop. Charlie says it's preserving the dead, before going on further beyond death, and it's a gentle reminder of reality where they once moved on from. The Doctor revolts this lecture from the caterpillars. The Doctor goes on saying that they are basically storing profound people that are significant to world culture for their own desires, and then points his finger at the till worker saying that using murder victims, especially women and children. He then goes on a tangent about class systems and that the working class shouldn't be serving the rich and famous for an idea of paradise, especially when they are dead. These people lived normal lives and that they ended having horrific ends at the hands of murderers. This doesn't add up, and the Doctor in a fit of rage shoves Charlie into the other caterpillars like boats in fierce waves. Curly set off an alarm and two more caterpillars emerge. Cuthbert the leader and Colin his second in command. Cuthbert confronts the Doctor for attacking his cohorts and attempts to strangle the Doctor with one of the robotic pinchers. The Doctor was struggling and tries to push off the pincher with his bare hands. Louisa comes to his aid. She pushed Cuthbert out of way and the pincher lost its grip off the Doctor's throat. The Doctor was freed and flees along with his companion to the TARDIS. Suddenly the Doctor started to feel weak and collapses to the floor. Louisa tries to wake the Doctor up and he regains consciousness but was still weak. Cuthbert and his cohorts were floating forward and examine the Doctor. Cuthbert says that the Doctor isn't human. He looks exactly like a human but hasn't the biology of one, and that the surroundings of Plus are affecting his life force, basically killing him slowly. The Doctor couldn't speak a word, only grumbles and moans. Louisa leaned over unsure what will happen to him. A group of people were spying through one of the shelves watching the situation and is revealed to be members of the 27 Club. Robert Johnson, Brian Jones, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, Jean-Michel Basquiat and Kurt Cobain. Jim says that the Doctor is like a symbol of hope and that it's like witnessing an angel dying. Jimmy on a spiritual level agrees and hatches a plan to save the Doctor. There was something intriguing about this random dying man and that he just appeared out of nowhere. The doctor was starting to see visions of two men passing by, looking at him, and their faces looked familiar to him. One was an older man, quite stern but had a twinkle eye like an army sergeant with a quirky soft side, and the other was a bit younger, a mischievous looking one with a Beatlesque haircut and smiled cheekily. The doctor in his head wasn't sure who these two men were, but at the back of his mind those faces did look strangely familiar. Louisa comforted him, and then the 27 Club appeared. They approached Cuthbert and asked why are like ants in an ant farm. Cuthbert denies this, thinking they'll forget instantly once they walk out the doors, but the 27 Club revolted against this like dictators are sentencing prisoners to death but only getting their minds wiped to forget this ordeal with the doctor. In a retaliation ploy they pick up the doctor still in his weakened state and start carrying him. They ask Louisa where they can put him and she says the TARDIS. Cuthbert and his cohorts feebly attempt to stop them, but the environment of Plus was starting to expose its true nature. Neon walls start seeping from the walls and the ceiling. The 27 Club started to break what was actually a simulation that imprisoned souls, and they were breaking it. They reach the TARDIS and Louisa gets the TARDIS key to enter. The 27 Club follow them in carrying the doctor and place in the armchair near the console. The 27 Club return to the simulation and watch the caterpillars start to disintegrate into metallic dust. The 27 Club then form a circle, hold each other's hands and look up to the unknown. Finally free to move on. One last good deed, and that was saving the doctor. Their bodies start to glow golden and fade in sparks. They were gone into the ether. Louisa headed to the console. Though unsure how to, the pilot the TARDIS started pulling levers to see if it'll take off somehow, and then she looks out her hands. They are becoming transparent, like she was fading out of reality. She tries to wake the doctor up, but he was still in an unconscious state, and then Louisa faded out of the TARDIS. Someone was shaking her and Louisa opened her eyes. She thought it was the doctor and quickly sat up, only to be two old friends of hers, Jessie Dalton and Pamela Peck. Louisa was surprised by this and wondered if she was accidentally teleported home. Jessie and Pamela laughed at this and said that the ridiculously strong tropical punch must have gone to Louisa's head. There was a house party going with about 20 people in it, and Funky Town was playing at full volume. Louisa came downstairs and sees everyone's having a good time. Couples making out on the sofa and in the corridors. Red cups were scattered all over the place and snacks aplenty on the dining room table. Louisa still wasn't sure about this, and Jessie put her arm over her shoulder saying she's probably had a bit too much to drink since splitting up with Glenn. Louisa turned to Jessie saying she never split up with Glenn, they just separated because of her move to Los Angeles to find acting work, and Jessie just laughed at this. Pamela butted in and said, "Glenn here." Louisa saw him by the dining room table and walked over to him. He was pleased to see her and said he hadn't seen her for 2 years. Louisa realized it was 1981. She explained to Glenn that she did star in a movie and went traveling with a British guy who goes by the name of the Doctor. Glenn asked whereabouts she visited and she replies with England. There was a banging sound coming from the fridge in the kitchen and Louisa, Jessie and Pamela went inspect it. Jessie thinks that one of the guys had stuffed one of the neighbor's cats in there as a prank and opened it. They got a shock when it's revealed to be the Doctor. How he got in there was on their minds, and the Doctor climbed out feeling a bit disorientated. The Doctor headed to the dining table, poured himself some that tropical punch and sipped it only to spat it out onto the carpet in front of the partygoers saying it tastes like water. The Doctor looked round and turned to Louisa saying that they're still in this soul prison. Louisa was confused by this and said she was teleported back to her time. The Doctor said he didn't set any teleportation coordinates if there was an emergency involving the TARDIS, and Louisa rebuffed this. She was reunited with her friends and her flame Glenn. The Doctor looked over and Glenn gave a shy wave. The Doctor rolled his eyes and started to prove his point that Louisa wasn't back home in her own time. The Doctor pointed at Louisa's two friends and said that they're dead. Louisa gave a disbelieved look at him. The Doctor asked Jessie and Pamela to show their back of their necks. The two questioned this and then the Doctor asked again, but in a frantic louder tone. They both turned and raised their hair. The Doctor and Louisa looked at the necks. Dates were printed on like tattoos. One of them was the 29th of July and other was the 30th of July, both from 1980. Louisa didn't have words and Jessie and Pamela turned back to her. They told her they got killed by an escaped mental patient with an electric drill and ended up her. Glenn walked up to them and told them that is all nonsense. Louisa started stutter and said she wanted to see his death date. Glenn instantly refused this until the doctor grabbed hold the scruff of his neck and looked at it. The 10th of August 1979, just 3 months after he and Louisa went their separate ways. Louisa asked Glenn how did he die. He said that her older brother Heath shot him in the chest with a shotgun while he was working at the local steakhouse where he and Louisa first laid eyes on each other. Louisa became distraught by this. Her own brother killing her boyfriend because of jealousy or sibling protection. Heath's motives remain unknown, and if Louisa crosses paths with him she'll kill for what he's done. Glenn comforted her and hugged her. Louisa was tearing up and notices Glenn was fading away. Louisa begged Glenn not to go, but alas, he faded into golden sparks and disappeared in front of her. Louisa tried to hold in the pain but she couldn't and her knees fell to the floor. She was broken. The doctor knelt next her but she pushed him away. She needed to grieve and he moved back out of her space. The doctor walked to a pair of curtains in the sitting room and pulled them open. The windows were bricked up and the partygoers started to realize that they are in some of purgatory. Suddenly the house's walls and furniture started to disappear. The partygoers also started to fade away into golden sparks and all was left was the doctor, Louisa and the TARDIS in a neon-lined environment. A man in a royal blue robe was also in the area. He had long brown hair and a beard. The doctor strolled up to him in anger and asked what on earth is he doing? The man replied that he was doing God's work and was helping the unfortunate dead to get to the afterlife even if they have to wait. The doctor disproved this and slapped the man backhanded, but it turns out the man was a hologram. The man calls himself the Adjuster and knows about the doctor's race. The doctor asked if he was from Gallifrey. The Adjuster denied this and said he's eternal. The doctor has heard of them. The Adjuster explained that he set off on his own using his powers for the greater good and using them to house the recently various deceased for a temporary solution to pass on the other side. The doctor went silent and wondered if the Adjuster really meant it. The doctor went on to question about the caterpillars. The Adjuster just said they are funny looking creatures and it was just for his own amusement. Again the doctor didn't anything. The Adjuster then pointed at the TARDIS and politely asked the doctor to leave. The domain was closing in on itself and the doctor raced back to the TARDIS. The Adjuster looked on and faded away. The doctor went through the doors and notices Louisa walking around the console. He quickly set some coordinates to escape the domain and watched the time rotor bob up and down. He then approached her and asked how she was feeling. Louisa said she felt strange but was fine. He mentioned Glenn, Jesse and Pamela to her. Her ears then pricked up and asked how does he know them? The doctor looked surprised by this and asked her what can she remember from the supermarket plus and the 1981 house party. Louisa was a bit baffled by this and said they've never been to a supermarket called Plus nor a house party in 1981, they've only recently been to 1984's England. The doctor wondered if the domain or even the TARDIS had wiped her memory of the event. The doctor asks one last question to her. Was her older brother Heath a killer? Louisa angrily slapped him in the face. She berates him for this accusation and that Heath never killed anyone in his life. The doctor apologized to her. She went on that Heath was caught by police but only for stealing car radios and getting in an affair with the police lieutenant's wife. She questioned him for knowing about her family and friends. He gave a slight response that he had vague psychic powers and that he's alien after all. Louisa looked up and down at him saying he looks exactly like a human. She asks him if he's a shapeshifter. The doctor flat out says no. He mentions he's got 2 hearts and vast intelligence to do with time travel. Louisa gave a sigh of relief. She must have thought the doctor would suddenly change into a green tentacle monster and eat her internal organs. Suddenly the console started to vibrate and sparks emerged. The time rotor started to fill up inside with flames and exploded, causing the 2 to fly back onto the floor. The TARDIS was spinning out of control, but to where?